Hello and welcome to Health Professional Radio. I'm your host, Neil Howard. Thank you so much for joining us for another segment. The safe adoption of AI can benefit mammography departments as they strive to deliver on the goals of the National Breast Screening Program. Well, joining us here on the program is Dr. Christopher Austin. He's Chief Medical Officer at Kheiron Medical Technologies to talk about some of the challenges that face Australia's breast screening programs and how AI can help address those challenges. Welcome to Health Professional Radio. Dr. Austin, thank you for joining.
Great to be here, Neil. Thanks for the invitation.
Now, of course, I did mention that your position there at Kheiron as Chief Medical Officer. Give us a bit of your professional background and talk briefly about your role there at Kheiron.
So I'm a UK-trained radiologist by background, currently based out of the tech hub of Seattle, Washington, but work globally and have for most of my career. Following my training in radiology, I actually spent about 10 years working for GE Healthcare in the imaging business and in the digital side. And then more laterally in artificial intelligence applied to radiology specifically. And it was really through that channel that I got introduced to a number of interesting, innovative, smaller companies like Kheiron. And I joined the company 3 years ago and been on an incredible journey.
What is Kheiron's mission?
Yeah, Kheiron's mission is to really leverage the power of deep learning or artificial intelligence technology to try and help detect and manage cancer. Our current focus is on breast cancer screening, and we have developed a number of AI-enabled applications that really help make, improve and automate and deliver better outcomes across that entire cancer care pathway. So what our focus is in terms of what we share with the market at the moment and are working on with customers is in that domain. But we have other domains in the cancer area that we're working on as well.
Is AI more than just smart machines?
It absolutely is, Neil. I mean, AI is, or deep learning or machine learning, as we call it in the scientific community, is really a tool that has incredible capability to ultimately perform tasks to the level of or even exceed the level of the human being. Now, that's a little bit grandiose in terms of what we're ascribing it to. What we are seeing today, however, is that this technology really can work hand in hand alongside radiologists, clinicians, and other health professionals to really improve outcomes. And that's the promise here that we think AI can deliver. And so in that regard, it is more than a machine because it's really a member of the care team trying to deliver a better outcome for healthcare workers and patients.
What would you say are a couple of Australia's major challenges when it comes to mammography screening?
Well, I would say that Australia's program, the Breast Screen Australia as it's known locally, shares many of the same challenges that we see across the globe. And Kheiron works in North America, across Europe, the Middle East, and we're certainly having some very interesting conversations and opportunities across Australia and New Zealand. Those challenges that I think we see locally in Australia that are related to two things, really. One is the workforce issues, where more and more radiologists are seen to be needed, at least based on some of the data that you see from the professional organizations, to meet the rising demand of images that are produced. Radiology has been, a really successful diagnostic area in clinical practice. As we develop new technologies, they become adopted, and more images need to be generated and read by radiologists. And across all of the radiology domain, that's an issue. But particularly with breast cancer screening, having the number of radiologists available to be able to read those scans is really essential. And I think the other thing to shout out to the listeners, some of those who may not really understand how breast cancer screening is delivered in places like Australia and much of Europe, is it requires 2 radiologists to actually review every single image. And that model's been in place for many of these countries for quite some time. And I think as you think through some of these issues around workforce, finding ways to actually reduce the impact of 2 radiologists or 2 humans to interrogate every image is where AI can certainly play a role. Our company at Kheiron has been successful in being the very first organization to receive a regulatory approval for using AI in that capacity. And what that means is we can free up one of the resources of those two individuals to actually focus on other areas within the radiology department or the breast cancer screening pathway. The other thing that I was just going to mention too there, Neil, too, is in terms of another challenge is really the impact on the clinicians themselves. The task of breast cancer screening is very tedious. It carries a lot of responsibility for the radiologists who have to make those clinical decisions, and having that additional support and figuring out new ways of leveraging technology so that they can focus on some of the other more advanced technologies that are now at their fingertips is another way that I do see AI really helping.
Now, you did say that you have approval with your screening technology, MIA.
Yes, so Kheiron's solution for breast cancer screening is a AI-enabled software system called MIA, which stands for Mammography Intelligent Assessment. And it has a number of different configurations and applications for which we have received regulatory approval for. But most importantly is that MIA can be inserted into a double reading screening workflow and actually take the place of one of the human readers and then work alongside a human to help support that double reading decision making. Now, if there's a difference between MIA's decision and the human reader, then it goes to a human arbitration. So there's always a human in the loop, and I think that's an important thing to put out to the listeners, that AI is not operating solo in these kind of scenarios, and certainly in breast cancer screening.
How do radiologists feel about using AI as opposed to that other person?
I think there's been a journey that the radiology community has been going on over the last 6 or 7 years, and I would say when many of these thought leaders were coming out and describing what the capability would be and could be, there was a lot of fear and trepidation, but mostly it was an unfounded fear. And I think radiologists now recognize that the kinds of tasks that AI is designed to do today and what it's receiving regulatory approval to do is not something that's going to threaten their job or take it away. Certainly not in the next 5 to 10 years from what I see. It's really... it's really a tool set and a capability to support some of the work that radiologists do, and hopefully give them greater reassurance and confidence in the clinical decisions that they're making, and improve some of their productivity. And I think in all areas in healthcare, I think clinicians see this as a vehicle that will help them also focus more attention on patients.
What is patients' feedback when they discover that AI is being used in their particular screening?
Well, at this stage, and that's an excellent question, because at this stage in screening, most programs that are using AI are really in the kind of the testing phase, and that's where certainly Kheiron is in a number of our different sites, particularly in Europe. One of our strongest partners is the National Health Service in the UK, and as part of the work that we're doing there, we're working side by side with the patient community to really understand and educate them about AI. I think what we have learned, first and foremost, is that patients are recognizing that AI is coming, and it's not something that they're pushing back on in the screening workflow. What they are asking in the research that we've been conducting, and some of the other research that we've been following, is that patients really just want to make sure that their doctors understand the research, understand how to evaluate these tools, and if they then in turn validate and accept to use this technology in screening, then they are putting trust in their doctors in the same way that they put trust in their doctors to prescribe different medications or use other different medical devices. And I think the other caveat at the end that we hear all the time from patients is that as long as we know that there is a human in the loop or a doctor in the loop, we put our trust in the doctors, and we think that this is something that we will embrace, and we're quite happy to see this technology unfold and be participants.
Well, Dr. Austin, give us a website where our listeners can learn much more about Kheiron Medical.
Yeah, so you can find us on www.kheironmed.com. That's spelled KHEIRONMED.com.
Well, I appreciate you joining us on the program and giving us this information this evening. Thank you so much.
You're most welcome, and thank you for the invitation, Neil.
You've been listening to Health Professional Radio. I'm your host, Neil Howard, in conversation with Dr. Christopher Austin. Audio copies of this program are available at hpr.fm and healthprofessionalradio.com.au. You can also subscribe to the podcast on iTunes, listen in, download at SoundCloud, and be sure and subscribe to our YouTube channel at youtube.com, Health Professional Radio.